Work. I love work. I could watch it all day long. I had some wonderful people show up at my apartment at my bidding yesterday, and day before yesterday, they cleaned it from one end to the other. They did the floors, they cleaned the bath. I loved it. I could just stand there and watch it all day long, even though they weren't didn't take them that long to do it. It would have taken me all day long, but not them. Work. What rolls up in your mind when you hear that word? Some of you probably thinking, I don't have to do it anymore. I'm retired. Well, I know from talking with some of you that being retired is as hard a work as work ever was, because you got time to do more things and you keep doing them and you get more on your list. And the first thing you know, you don't have any management except yourself for how you're going to handle everything there is to do. Words are interesting, funny things. This word work. Four-letter word, W-O-R-K. You know some other four-letter words, right? Love, thank you. That's one. We aren't saying all those others that may come to mind. You know, one of the problems with four-letter words is the etymology of language, of English language at least, comes from two basic sources, the Germanic through the Anglo-Saxon and the Celtic. And in the Celtic language, words sound like what they are. So if you think of some of those words that are not to be spoken on in polite company like this, they sound just like what they are. Instead of mud or a bog, you got muck. Now you know what that is just by the sound of the word. You don't have to have a better idea of it. You don't have to explain it to anybody. When I was a kid, we used to, in the seasons in Florida, when it would be drier, we'd go out to the lake beds and we'd gather up muck, which is just mud, and dry it out off the bottom of the lake and bring it home and put it in my grandma's garden, or sell it to people if they were too lazy to go get their own. So you know, muck. Well, work falls into a little of that sense that some people, it's a dirty word. So we come up with, in this teaching, a better idea, and that better idea is it is your spiritually guided creative expression. I like that better than work, because for me, for many of us, thinking about work is a really tough thing. Think about when you wake up in the morning, you're headed off to work. You have to go to work, and your life is defined by your work. You spend 8 hours at least. Nowadays, I think the average is more like 10 or 12 hours in our jobs, and we work, we put out effort, and that carries all these wonderful ideas, but it also carries some other ideas that aren't so wonderful, perhaps. So, if you think about the idea of this word, work, and you think of what it gathers up and brings up into your mind, if it's anything short of the opportunity to do something fun and wonderful and be supported and be honored and loved, then you may not be doing the right work. You know? Years and years ago, Years and years ago, I first heard somebody say, if you hate your job, if you hate your work, you're not doing yourself or anybody else any good by doing it. I was sitting in the Science of Mind Center, our previous center, and my partner at the time elbowed me really hard because he knew I hated my job at that point. I made myself go every day because it paid the bills. I had great benefits. It was all the things that work is supposed to do, right? It gives us all these opportunities to do other things. And I lived for the weekends. And I lived for vacations, which I got 2 weeks of every year, unless I wanted to take it without pay. And I enjoyed a lot of what I did when I got to my job, but not all of it. I enjoyed working with people. I enjoyed that part of it, but all the paperwork and administration and scheduling and all that stuff I did not like. Consequently, much to my partner's chagrin, I quit. Not the next week, but 2 weeks later. I had already decided in my mind what I wanted to do instead. I wanted to do private practice instead of working for somebody else telling me when to show up and who I can talk to. And everybody told me, you can't just go into a private practice as a therapist. You got to get at least a year's worth of finances together. You've got to get all of these things in order and in line. You got to get your licenses all straightened out, which I had already done. And you have to really be ready for that. And you have to build a name for yourself so you'll get clients, because otherwise you just got a name out on a plaque somewhere. And I heard all of that, and I said, yeah, but I can't keep doing what I'm doing. This is killing me, and literally felt like it was. So I quit my job 2 weeks later. I met someone at a meeting right after that who said, I have a dear friend who's been doing therapy for years. He's in this same field of alcohol and drug rehab and working with families, and he needs somewhere to send his clients. I went, hello. So over the next 2 weeks, I built a practice. I had a space to use. I sublet an office. And within a month, I had a full practice, paying full fees, full benefits. Now, that's because I had stepped into the role of who I really am and what I want to be, and what my calling, as Norma pointed to, is from inside of me. And there's a power that made that happen that isn't just about me. It wasn't just that I'm really special, even though I am, and so are you. But it was because I had learned a lot already about words and about how we use words and about how important words are. See, it's our mind that is the creative function in your life. Everything in your life is a result of the creative function of your mind. Good ideas, not so good ideas. Wonderful, I'm going this direction. Not so wonderful, I can't help it. I got to go this direction because whatever closing down and impressed upon us by something else that we don't know we have the freedom to say no to, often lead us down other roads. But the mind is creative, but a thought that the mind creates is the action that you take. It's the first step in an action, is to have a thought. Now, you know what it feels like to be joyful. You know what it feels like to be supported. You know what it feels like to be honored and welcomed and treasured. Imagine that in your work. And the thought becomes, I am those things. I have a job that supports me in that. And that job may not be one like a paycheck job. It may be a job where I just get to do that creative expression that is me and count on the flow of prosperity coming to me. But you get the thought. But the thinker, you're the thinker that creates that thought, is where the real creative power is. Once the thought comes out and you say, I am thus, you have shaped something into form. I know this is a little esoteric, but hang on. Because from that thought then comes an example, an experience, a form, a function. From the thought of, I hate my job, comes all of the opportunities to hate your job. I hate my job. I said this morning on my way over here, I'm really struggling sometimes with time. Time is just playing really funny tricks on me lately. And I said I would be on time if I didn't fall into a vortex of some sort that would distract me and get my attention. Well, I said all of that, and it was kind of funny, and Jake and I were joking about it. And then I'm sitting here, and just as we're starting, the clock falls over and falls off, and the battery falls out of it. So we don't know what time it is. Well, I do now because, thank you, Lee fixed it. All it takes is a thought. And these things that happen to us are the result of those thoughts. We create these things. And sometimes the word work can be such a hidden truth, such a hidden reality. You have to look behind it and into it deeper to see what is the creative process there. I talk about doing spiritual work all the time. Well, believe me, that is not hard work. That is not work in the sense of something that I dread doing, something that costs me a lot, something that takes a lot away from my life or my time or anything else. It is the thing that brings me such great joy. To read, to meditate, to do affirmations and watch them unfold. That's exciting stuff. To set a goal and see it as not just a goal out there somewhere, but a goal that I am going to grow into becoming. And then watch and see how that works. And I'm usually surprised as heck by it. Almost said another 4-letter word. I'm surprised because the way to get to that may be very different than anyone ever imagined. I once said about when we were still at the academy and we were shrinking in size and things were getting difficult financially, man, it would be so nice to have kind of a retreat place where we could just go be together, enjoy the retreat, enjoy the sense of presence and camaraderie and community that comes. And here we are. Now, I'm not saying I did that. COVID had a lot to do with that. It wasn't just Bob. But Bob's part in it was manifesting this space, which several people in our community kept saying to me when we were first started looking for another space, you ought to go look at this. You ought to go look at this. And I thought, I'd heard it was too rustic, and so I wouldn't do it. And once I saw it, I fell in love immediately. This is a beautiful location, beautiful place to be, in the woods, no less. I love the woods. So I'm knowing then, when I think about work, that there are 2 basic tracks I can go down. You know, we talk about our train of thought. You get that first thought going, and then it builds and it attracts more thoughts that match it. So you have a thought and a train of thought. Well, the train of thought is what I'm really kind of after today, because once you think about work, what's the starting point and what is the imagined ending point? Where is your train of thought going to take you? Is it taking you to a place of suffering and pain and sorrow for 25 years until you can retire? Or is it taking you, once you're retired, down a path of to the train station that says there's nothing more for you. You should just sit here and watch television and get old. That one pulls on me sometimes, because I do love to watch movies and things on television, but that ain't where I want to live. And that's not the train station I want my thought to take me to. Instead, I want my thought to take me to greater and greater living, more broader knowledge and experience of what it means to be alive, of what it means to be fully embracing life and letting it embrace me and take me to the grand new adventures. I have a bucket list of places to go. I don't have time to get old. I don't have time to get slowed down. I've got too many places to go, too many things to do, too many things I want to do. So you get to decide what train of thought are you going to create, because it's all about you being the creator. And if you create this, and you know, we get into these habits of thought. Once we get them started, sometimes they just become habits, and you just don't even sometimes realize what you're doing until something happens. And surprise, oh, that's what I've been doing and thinking. Well, no wonder. Yeah, so you can lead down that path down to frustration and agitation, or you can lead the path on over to greater goodness, greater freedom, greater joy. And for work, I do believe that since anything I'm going to spend the majority of my waking hours doing had better be something that I find joy in, something that values and honors my gifts, whatever those are, however I'm bringing it forward. It needs to be something that is going to allow me the freedom to share the love that I feel for people, for events or things. It's got to be a place where I can be of service to myself as well as to you and others. After I'd gotten into that private practice and been doing it for a while, I was on vacation, on one of those 2-week vacations, went to the beach, and it was so much fun. I got to plan my day, my schedule. I got to decide what to eat. I didn't have to answer to anything or anybody. And man, it was wonderful. I loved it. Spent about 2 weeks doing that. And I came back and declared, I am going to live from this day forth as if I were on vacation. And I double dog dare you all to try that, whatever your life is right now. Because on vacation is where I felt free. I got enough rest. I took care of my body. I had time to do that. I got my priorities straight about what mattered to me. And so that's what I think work ought to be for all of us, is that time and place where we get our priorities straight, where we have time to take care of ourselves, and we are deeply valued. I went on vacation with people I loved and people who valued me. So how do we turn around the situation if work for us is negative? If work for us is that taking us to that train station that we don't want, or that if we had in our better world, in our better lives, we wouldn't have. I'm reading a wonderful little book right now by Georgiana Tree West. It's called The 10 Commandments of Prosperity. She's a unity minister. And you know what? She's wonderful. In the old days of Unity and Science of Mind were not that different. Unity and CSL were, and they still aren't in many places. The basic teaching of the two is the same. And what she says in her book, the second commandment, the first one is, God's the only one. Don't take any other gods but God. The second one is the one about making graven images. And her version of it is, you shall make no mental images of lack. Make no mental images of lack, including where your work is concerned. And especially there, since you spend most of your day doing it. And again, this is whether you're retired or you're on a paycheck. It's the same thing. So the first step is to decide what we're not going to do. Ernest Holmes taught, when he taught about treatment, was that sometimes you have to deny before you affirm. You have to figure out what you say no to, and when you get clear about what that no is, then you know exactly what the opposite is, exactly where you're going to go next, or what the next better idea is. So, thou shalt not make mental images of lack. See, that tells you what you need to grow out of, what you need to get a better idea about. Getting a better idea about work. First thing is, I think one of the most important ones is, what your work is not defined by anybody but you. The job, if you have a job, doesn't determine or say anything about your work, because that job doesn't exist if you're not in it. It's not your job unless you're doing it. And it's not your work unless it matches who you are and what your vision and purpose is. And, we get too caught up with the idea that the work out there, the job, the people who control it and who tell us what to do are really where the work is. And then where the power is. So then when we retire, for many, many people, they're kind of wandering around. What do I do with myself now? Because the work has defined your own personal work. So one of the better ideas is knowing that your work is your work and no one else's. I loved it. Up there somewhere there was, I think she said it that, it's something that only you can do. No one else can do your work for you. That's really hard when you want to go on vacation and expect somebody else to do it. But nobody else is going to do it the same way, because they're not you. They don't bring your gifts to the givingness of what the job is. Another great idea with this, what we need to change is instead of thinking about what am I going to get from my job, because if the only reason you're working is for a paycheck, that ain't going to be very satisfying in the long run. What can I give instead? What can I give more? If you hate your job, you know how to get out of it, right? Other than do like I did and just quit. If you decide you need to really be there and you can't stop it, then instead start becoming more than your job is. Start growing. Start putting more of yourself into it, more of your love into it, more of your life into it. Now, in the book Power of Decision, or not Power of Decision, You Are the Power by Kennedy Schultz, he goes into a lot of detail about that. I'm not going to do that here because you can read. If you want to read it, you can get it on Amazon. Just one little section on how to deal with work. And he was great about in that section because in his life prior to being a religious science minister, he trained and taught people in rehab. He was a rehab person who did rehab for people's jobs and work and career. So he got a real clear picture of that. I'm not going to just spout it to you here. But I am going to suggest that in building this new idea, this new way to come at work, whether it's your retirement work, I mean, sometimes I'm not really retired, but when I feel like I am, my question in the morning, or when I'm not sure what to do this day, because I still structure my own time all the time, what is mine to do today? Simple question. And so I journal and write about that. And it isn't so much what I was mine to do, but what do I want and require that I feel and experience today? I want to feel and experience love. I want to feel and experience value. I want to feel and experience excitement and energy and joy. And then once I clarify that in my mind, then the opportunities for all that begin to show up. But if we start our day saying, another day I don't have a structure, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself, I'm just, if you're like me, then you'll either escape into some kind of addictive process where you don't have to think anymore, like television, or you're going to walk yourself right into some pretty negative, painful kind of things. You don't know what to do. Someone, something, somewhere will always be willing to tell you what to do. I don't know about you, but my family was always quite willing to tell me what to do if I didn't take charge of it myself. And, I just get so mad at them about that. The truth is, I was the one inviting them to do it by saying, I don't know. Well, you do know. You're a knower. That's the main thing you are as a human being. We're here to know. You're a knower, so you know that you know. And all you have to do is start there. I know that I know. And if you don't have a clue yet, something in me knows and will reveal to me at the exact time that I need it what is mine to do, what is mine to be. Yeah. So start with who you are. Who am I? And where am I? I am a knower. Well, what am I knowing? I am the center of the activity of the divine. My mental process is the divine thinking through me. Stand there first. Declare that first. And let that really sink in. I am. Where am I? I'm in a spiritual universe that is friendly and responds to my deepest beliefs and my greatest desires. Yeah. And then, what is my true purpose today? Maybe not for the rest of your life, but for today. Some days my true purpose is mostly about loving on my grandkids. And that's a pretty cool thing. Giving them a ride to school. Taking care of certain needs that show up that I can do. And there's so much joy in that. What is my true purpose? I'm here to love. I'm here to give. I'm here. Of course, you have to answer that for yourself. And what if anything is stopping me or getting in the way? Is there in this great train of thought that I'm on, is there a sidetrack that wants to pull me off? A friend of mine used to say that, the road to success is lined with many, many very appealing parking places and overlooks. If you've ever driven out through the mountains, you know how tempting it is to stop at every one and look. There's so many sidetracks. When I was in college, I was hitchhiking across country with an intention of getting home by a certain time, and I was picked up by some young guys close to my age, and their goal was to stop at every bar before they got to where they were going. Well, about the third bar, when I realized just how drunk they were getting, I jumped out in front of the road and someone else picked me up right away. So I that was back in the days when you could hitchhike. Don't try this at home, people, please. Not now. I wore my roommate's football jacket, and so everybody thought I was clean cut and safe for some reason. So, but wherever those side roads are, you've got to have the discipline to know better. And the discipline is to step out of any belief that circumstances control you. No circumstances control you. You have power and freedom and the ability to choose and to set those choices in motion with your beliefs and your thoughts and to have them moving forward. See, and then you don't have to make all that happen. You don't have to figure out how to make anything happen. The only thing you have to make happen is getting the idea and getting very clear about it, and then allowing the infinite to bubble up through you and out into the world and to bring about these things. And we're running out of time here, so I want to leave you with one story. Guy was walking around somewhere in Europe and came upon a place where looked like they were building something big. And he walks up to this person standing out front and says, "What in the world are you doing?" "Oh, I'm cutting these stones. I've got to cut these stones. If I don't get them all cut and get them exactly the right size and in the right place, my supervisor is going to be all over me, and I may not even get paid." Wow. So he went to the next person and said, "So what are you doing?" "Oh, I'm a craftsman. I am a major craftsman. I'm making these stones so they all fit together and they're in perfect order, and I'm perfecting my craft, and my craft is being great." Okay, good. And then he sees another person over standing kind of aback from everybody, and he walks over to that person and says, "So what are you doing?" "I'm building a cathedral." That's the consciousness we need to develop. I'm building a cathedral. And yes, all those other pieces go into it, but building the cathedral is my role and my place and my part, and it's your part in your life as well. Take this home with you. Do it, because you're wonderful. So am I. So it is.